flip it. Oh, wait a minute.
There we go. I flipped it. Got it.
Okay, let me know when you're ready. You done on stage? Okay, great. And
thank you, stage manager.
Come on, Mr. Rubio, with the water bottle.
Okay, so now that we've had our countdown, we can get started. Thank you very much. First of all, can everyone hear me okay? Yes. Okay, I have microphone trouble, so I just wanted to make sure. Welcome everyone to DIVERCity LA. We're having a conversation on identities and community in the Los Angeles leather community. My name is Beacon Onyx. I am the pledge master for Onyx SoCal Southwest, and I'm one of the co-hosts for this event. Our other organizers and co-hosts are the lovely Cypher, Miss Sanctuary 2017, I believe.
Yep.
Yes. And also Scarlet Sin, Miss LA Leather 2017, and where did she go?
Up breath.
Okay, well, welcome. There we go. So to start off, DIVERCity stands for DIVER. Diversity, inclusion, visibility, education, and respect. Tonight, we will be engaging with those terms through a panel discussion featuring individuals from various backgrounds, and we are also going to have an activity/exercise meant to challenge the labels that we put on ourselves and that society places on us. This is the first event of its kind held during Los Angeles Leather Pride.
Yeah.
We would like to thank the Los Angeles Leather Pride Planning Committee and also the Los Angeles Leather Coalition for supporting this event. I would also like to acknowledge our sponsor, the One Archives, who arranged for us to have the space this evening. Jen, would you like to say a few words? Yes? No? Okay, well, at least stand up and let us acknowledge you.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Yes. Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us. We're really honored to sponsor tonight's event. I'm Jennifer Gregg. I'm the Executive Director of the One Archives Foundation. We're the community partner for the One Archives at the USC Libraries, which is the largest LGBTQ archive in the world. We have many of the leather collections at the archives. If you have not come to visit, please come see me at the end of this event. I'll provide you my contact information. I would love to schedule a tour. And I would also encourage you to think about your own histories. It's our personal stories that really tell the complete history of our communities. So if you have personal collections that you'd like to donate to the archives, we would love to have them. We use them for exhibitions. We have an exhibition right now at our gallery in West Hollywood off of Robertson called Lost and Found, Safer Sex Activism. I encourage you to come by and see it. It runs through June 24th. And we also use our collections for our education programming with youth. So thank you very much, and again, we're honored to host.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. I would also like to acknowledge our interpreter, Christina.
All right.
A little housekeeping before we officially begin. As you may have already indulged, we do have some snacks and water in the back. Please enjoy, please take them because we do not want to take them home with us. Restrooms are located through the double doors in the back. The first portion of our event will be a panel discussion, and after that we will take a short 10-15 minute break and then return for the group activity. If during the discussion, if you feel the need to step out for a minute, if the conversation gets a little bit too personal, too heated, what have you, feel free to step out and then return when you would like. Okay. As I said earlier, tonight we will be having conversations on identities and communities in leather. We will be hearing from individuals from various identities, gender identities, and ethnic communities. I would ask that you listen and take in what they have to share about their own experience and engage in the discussion we will have this evening. We encourage audience participation. If you would like to ask the panelists a question, you will find a note card and a pen on your seats. Please write your questions clearly and pass them to the end of the aisle, to the center of the aisle, where Scarlett will be able to collect them, and we will answer them throughout the event. The goals for our panel discussion are to provide visibility for women and men of color, share experiences that are unique to women and men of color in the leather community, and address problematic issues within the community and discuss how we overcome them. Please join me in welcoming our panel. First, Mike Hooker. In a second. Hang on. Cupcake, Miss Sanctuary 2018. Migs Onyx, aka Miguel Buhanda, aka Migs On, aka, did I get all of them? Okay, and Bam Bam.
All right.
And in from her flights from wherever she was in the country the past couple of days, we have Taisha. Thank you all for taking the time out of your week to join us. Let's start with having each of you introduce yourselves in your own words and share something that you would like people to acknowledge about you regarding your gender or ethnicity. Yes, great. Go ahead.
It's on.
Okay, what is it?
It was on.
Okay. So my name is Michael Hooker, and I can. Yeah. I know. Well, I actually do this for a living, so. I consider myself what? And actually, I can talk without. I have plenty of it. I can talk without it. So I consider myself a triple underrepresented minority because the term URM can be much broader than just people of color. And I had 3 comings out in my life, and the first was acknowledging that I was Asian. That was my first coming out. The second was acknowledging that I was gay, and the third was that I was kinky. It's sort of a broad base that my life has been built around, just acknowledging for myself and to others those things. And I have, part of my unique history is that I often don't get acknowledged by the Asian community as being Asian simply by the way I look, because I don't look as Asian as some of them may want me to, and that's been an interesting sort of conundrum in terms of navigating that, but that's my simple history. The leather history, I'm a former board member and a former member of Avatar. I'm a member of the Chicago Hellfire Club. I am an associate, or have been an associate producer for the Mr. Long Beach Leather Contest and a former judge. And I do a lot of clinician type of work and public demo and rope bondage stuff, and shibari is my specialty.
Okay. Thank you. Cupcake?
Hi everyone, my name is Cupcake. I am a Black Christian polyamorous lifestyle slave who also likes to hit people with sharp, shiny objects and electroplay. And I'm Miss Sanctuary Leather 2018. Now, what else do you want to know? Because I can tell you more. The first leather event that I ever went to was a leather contest, and so we see how that turned out. Thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Migs. My name is Miguel. I was born and raised in East LA. I'm the vice president of Onyx Southwest. I am relatively new to the organized leather community here in Los Angeles, but I participated in the leather community for many years as a participant, spectator, voyeur, however you want to call it. For many years, I didn't necessarily consider myself as a kinky person, but through education, through exposure, and to experience, and a lot of wonderful experiences, I've been able to actually be able to own my kink side. And as vanilla or as kinky as it can be, I think it's very important to acknowledge the diversity of not only myself as a kinkster, but more so as a person of color. Living in Los Angeles in a primarily, most of my friends and the people I grew up around were, are Latino, and I found out, that living in that bubble and realizing that there's so much more to community, it's really important to acknowledge that we have to, look at the differences, and we can talk about this more a little in detail, but more importantly, I do understand that I've always had an issue with myself in regards to not necessarily identifying as Mexican because I don't feel Mexican enough, and understand that I do have privilege because I'm a light-skinned Mexican. And I think that's always been a conflict within myself into working with other people of color, and especially amongst the gay community. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. Thanks.
Thank you.
Testing. Oh. Welcome aboard. Yes, I'm a flight attendant. I flew in. I landed 4 hours ago because I'm lazy. My name is Taisha Nicole Best. I am out. JetBlue knows me as the JetBlue dominatrix, according to the rumors. I'm not the pro-dom in my family. That is my sir, Kirk Rubin. I am a African Panamanian, ex-preacher's kid, military brat, queer, periodically an asexual person. I am also, took on another title, I am now the president of Onyx Pearls, Deep South, Wakanda Forever. Hello. I am also the media maven of International Mr. Leather, International Mr. Boot Black, assistant editor-in-chief of Leatherati.com, and I'm pretty sure I forgot something else that I don't know. I'm still a member of Onyx Pearl Southeast. Okay. So I'm also extremely hard of hearing. Technically, I'm legally deaf to the government. I am transitioning eventually to learning ASL. I have not done that yet. Something that I want people to know that so we were talking about coming out the closet. So I, because of my background, the military brat, ex-preacher's kid, I actually did not grow up in the U.S. Until basically I came into the U.S. at high school. I did have like a little stint in North Carolina, but most of my upbringing actually was overseas. I was born in Germany, lived in Italy and Panama. So I actually came out of the closet as hard of hearing, then kinky, then poly, then black. Opposite order. Because America. Because I didn't have to recognize my blackness before I came to America. Because outside of America, it wasn't as hard. So it has been kind of I can't even say rude awakening. It's kind of been a deadly awakening for me to come out as a black woman. I'm actually more comfortable on my Panamanian side. I've always been comfortable with the patacones, I love the food. Anyways, that culture I've always resonated with. It wasn't until the Ferguson riots that I literally had to tell myself, Taisha, you're black and you're also in America. Hello. So that's kind of I kind of want to put that out there that some of us come out of the closet. The order at which we come out of the closet can vary depending on our upbringing.
Okay, thank you all again very much.
Thank you.
When it comes to coming out of the closet, for people of color, there's coming out of the gay closet, coming out of sometimes the black closet or what have you, and then there's also coming out of the leather closet, and then those are all different coming out experiences. I've had a number of conversations with people of color who have walked into a leather bar, seen no other people of color, and walked right out because they didn't see themselves in the bar, and they assumed that leather was just for white people or for men or for cis men, what have you. So, I want to ask you guys, all the question. To start off, I want you all to describe a time at either a leather bar or a leather event where you felt at home, where you felt as though you could fully express yourself and your identity, that you didn't have to hide that you were black or Latino or Asian, and not have to worry about being judged for who you are. Anyone who wants to address it can go ahead.
Thanks, guys. You guys are great. There we go. Cool. Anybody hear me? Yeah. Awesome. So, I mentioned previously that my first experience with leather, or rather with seeing people do the things that leather people do, was at SoCal Leather Woman 2012. I graduated college 6 months prior. I was on a quest to find all the things that I had ignored during my academic studies. And I ran into SoCal Leather Woman 2011 called Chocolate Serene Phillips, also known as Miss Serene. And Miss Serene, hey girl, how you doing? Well, I'm glad you're here. Do you know my husband? Do you know this person? Come, let me take you and show you. That's how this started, right? So then I watched the contest, and I watched Naria, who would then win the title, A Woman of Color, stand up and give her a speech, and I was floored by not only the welcome she received, but by the passion in her voice. And I said, well, if she could do it, I can do it. That led me to the conversations I was able to have with the people at this contest, women and men alike. It was very different from the experience that I had in my youth, walking into a leather bar kind of by myself and having no one to tell me, it's okay that you're here, because I got scared. Because everybody was wearing leather and looked all amazing and handsome and sexy, and I was like, I don't know these people. Maybe I should go home. So I did. But then 5 years later, I went to this event, and here are all these people, women and men alike, doing all the things. And then I said, oh, it's okay. I too am a pastor's daughter, so I've heard the words, it's not okay for you to be that, can't be that either, nope, can't be that. Jessica, why are you hanging out with all the lesbians? Are you a lesbian? Well, mother, God rest her, I like girls, they're very pretty. I like to throw floggers, I was like to be hit by floggers, and I would never have known that had Miss Serene said, hey girl, how you doing? What you doing? Girl, come on, let's go, let me introduce you to some people. Because I remember the first time I walked in, I was scared, and I thought nobody would say hi to me, or everybody lived there in their little cliques and in their little groups and in their little families and making out and doing the things. And then there was me, and I was by myself. And she treated me with kindness and with love and compassion. And so I try to do that for everyone else, because I want other little black girls to know, it's okay, girl, come on, come in. We'll come in, we're open. We know all the things, let me show you all the things. Yes?
I share.
So my, I guess the question was the first sort of transformative or welcoming experience. Mine actually wasn't even in this country. So there was a part of my life where I was traveling a lot, and I actually worked in Paris for 2 months. And I went to one of the leather bars, I don't know if it's still there, it was called Keller, which means cellar. And I remember I walked up to the door, and there's a little peephole, and they open the door and they look if you're decked out in gear, and I was. I brought just enough to I could fit in my suitcase, walked in, ordered my beer, and went downstairs. And every bar in Europe has a dark room downstairs or in the back, and got sucked into it like a freaking vacuum cleaner. And it was as if there were no issues, no nothing. It was just get down to business and start having fun and playing. And that was one of the only times when there just wasn't the endless game of sizing people up, getting turned down, turning down, and feeling judged. You just got pulled right into it and felt the energy immediately. And I've never actually felt that level of welcomeness here. It's not that it's not welcoming or that I can't walk into a bar or to go to an event, but that was one of the ones where it was just neutral, where it was just people wanted to play. And it just didn't matter that you were fat or you were Asian or whatever, it's like come in and play. And so that was my big transformative moment.
I'll say something. Okay, so mine, again, is a little weird. Maybe not. So when we talk about like feeling comfortable, you have to also realize that involves not feeling as if you have to defend yourself or your actions or your creed, color, disability, the leather bingo that we talk about a lot, honor, integrity. So for me, I was sitting on a panel at IML 2 years ago. How many years ago? Oh, 4, I don't remember now. Yeah. Okay, so I started out in the community super young. I started at the age of 19. I'm now turning 34 this year. So 2 years ago, I sat on a POC panel at IML. Of course, the room was super tiny, but it was filled with black and brown and Asian magic. It was so great. And as I was sitting on the panel, I had this epiphany that it was a couple months before when I was having more fellowship with the Onyx that I was the most comfortable I ever felt in the fact that I could be as urbanized and honest, vocally honest, because we say a lot of things in our head that we shouldn't say out loud. But I could be as vocally honest as I wanted. As a young person, I didn't have to prove myself and my background to them, because they just saw me and immediately saw me as Ken, versus in other spaces, they see me and they're like, she's young, what does she know? She's black, where does she come from? Can we use her? So there's so many questions that comes out of people's heads in other spaces versus in predominantly marginalized spaces. You don't feel that judgment. You don't feel like you have to work as hard to hold the space and sit in the space and celebrate in the space. Because sometimes, and I've been talking about it recently, it's exhausting to sit in spaces to where you're the minority. Because sometimes it doesn't feel like you're there to celebrate, you're there to represent instead. And that's a whole different title and headspace you have to be in versus just being there and existing. And, the movie Black Panther really, if anyone wants to see what it's like to exist in a space where you're most comfortable in and celebrating and being who you are, the Black Panther movie pretty much showed that. And I think that's why there's such a shift in a lot of these marginalized populations to where we're just more boldly speaking about what it is that makes us happy and healthy in this current stage of time. So again, my most comfortable experience actually was within the past 5 years, and all of the 12 years that I've been in a community. I didn't have a job to do. I didn't have a title. I was just there to be tied. They called me queen. I called them kings and queens because we were all on an equal level, and we were just there to have fun.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think I was on the panel also, and I was first time you speak. I know you were. I was like, what do I want to say for her? And I think, because I've been working in public health for about 20 years here in Los Angeles, and in working in public health and with people of color here, I always found it hard for me to really feel comfortable because, one, I wasn't necessarily comfortable with my Latino side, and ultimately, being a young gay person, I was really nervous dealing with other people of color because I didn't feel like I belonged with them. And I think in those communities of color, especially the Latino community, coming from an immigrant family myself, the stigma of what leather and kink was, I mean, even in public health in these organizations, I heard the stigma towards BDSM, kinks, and stuff like that. I'm going to share a real quick story. I did a training a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the spectrum of risk. And BDSM, water sports, and other fisting were part as risk behaviors. And all the public health employees that were in that training literally talked about how risky these behaviors were. And I was just like, of course, my Onyx came out, and I was like, nope. Let's have a quick conversation about this and really educate them with really where in the spectrum of risk they belong. And I was really upset because I just realized that that's what was holding me back. I felt most comfortable because I own it. I'm a very sex positive slut, and I've always been for many years. Yep. And until recently, meeting my Onyx brothers here in Los Angeles, have I been able to be embraced by who I am without being judged by the color of my skin, my accent, my lack of accent, how light or dark I am, where I come from, what language I speak. And it was really important for me don't get me wrong, because it was a people of color group, I did hesitate joining, because I was feared I was not going to belong also in that group. But ultimately, I was completely embraced. It was just amazing feeling. And, and they've accepted me to the point where they've really helped me flourish in other areas of my life and really provided platforms for me to discuss these different topics that I was at one point very self-conscious about. And I'm very, very proud of being an Onyx brother and really proud to be around my brothers. So that's where I felt most comfortable. And the last 2 years have been nothing but amazing. So I want to thank my brothers here today.
So I swear this whole panel is not one giant advertisement for Onyx. But is it not? Let's keep I mean, Mike, I wanted to get back to something that you said, that when you were in France and you were at that the bar and the place that you got sucked into, phrasing, you mentioned that there was no hesitation, there were no barriers to you feeling fully comfortable and fully accepted in that bar. What are some barriers or difficulties that you have encountered here in the States, and if you're comfortable, specifically here in Los Angeles, that have prevented you from being fully or feeling fully accepted? And yeah.
Okay, I'd like to define like the sense of community as being something a little different, but the online community, which I've been taking part of. I've been a member of a site called Recon, which I think a lot of the men in here know what that is. I've been on there since it was not Recon, since 2001. I have recently been going back and forth. It's not scientific, but I changed my profile. They allow you to claim your racial identity. And I've changed it from mixed race, between that to white, and to Asian. And every time it seems that I change it to Asian, my hits in terms of people wanting to talk or anything go to zero. Absolute zero. Mixed race is a different bag, a little bit more. And if I change it to white, then they can see my pictures, and there's nothing different about my profile other than that one tagline. And to me, that shows an incredible amount of bias. And talking to a lot of my Asian friends in the community, that they experience a similar thing too. That's hard to deal with. That's actually something that knowing that they don't know anything about you, but except for that title, that they won't talk to you or that they won't want to engage at some level. So that's where most, like even currently, where I experience a lot, I think it's more than microaggression in that case, but a lot of bias is online. And especially I'm off of Scruff and off of Grindr, because they are the absolute worst. They're worse than Recon when it comes to that. So, does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you. I've done the same kind of experiment too with my own results as well. It speaks to an issue within the community where different ethnicities are viewed as sexier than others. And I think part of that has to do with marketing. In flyers, event flyers, videos, what have you. Again, this is not a plug for Onyx, but Miguel, Onyx has made a very intentional effort to diversify the posters and flyers of Onyx events. Can you speak to why that was the case and what responses that you have received from not only people of color, but also outside of that community?
Yeah, I definitely can say that when it comes to marketing, especially amongst utilizing the term people of color, it's always been a challenge for me to accept how people really interpret that. I'm very happy to say that our President Chad and the developers of the materials really take notice on diversifying the materials, especially with Onyx Southwest. When I hear the term people of color, I instantly think black. And that's just something that I have done historically, and I think a lot of people in my community also do that. So when it comes to diversifying materials and flyers, because again, I've worked in public health, and we also had to diversify our materials to include other populations. Yes, Los Angeles is really Mexican. It really is, if you haven't noticed. But I think it's one of those things where if we really want to work with all people of color, we really need to figure out ways on how to get non-blacks to really have buy-in into the term people of color. Because I think what ends up happening is when you have materials that focus on just one race or one look. Come on, we're all young people. We used to see the flyers for the clubs. When I used to go to West Hollywood back in the day when I was young kids, I saw like the circuity, white twinks, and I am not a white twink. I'm just a big ding dong. But so I think it's one of those things where how do I see myself on those flyers? Do I feel like I am going to be accepted by that community? And if we don't actively, consciously look at the materials that we're putting out to diversify our events, it's really important, especially because, let's face it, leather has always been looked at as a gay, cis male, a white thing. So the thing happens is a lot of people of color really resist that. I just shared a little while ago how I saw that kinky BDSM community is like, oh, that's too scary. I don't know this. And diversifying the materials is really important, and we should all take an active role when it comes to making sure that the communities are represented, that you want to attend these events. And more importantly, if you see too much of something, let's do something about it and mix it up a little bit. We have so many varieties of people in this community, and I know it can be done.
I apologize. I'm not going to have a great segue here. A question that I have in terms of marketing to events, specifically about large national leather events. I've seen marketing for Folsom specifically that is an event that is open to all gender identities and all ethnicities. As such, oftentimes the marketing for Folsom encompasses all gender identities and all ethnicities. Other leather events across the country, not so much. When it comes to those events that are marketed to a very specific type of male, however, they have open registration to all gender identities. Cupcake, Taisha, are those events where you feel that you would be comfortable at, welcomed at? Do you avoid those events? Do you go anyways?
So, a little bit more about me. I majored in journalism, and I majored in public relations and advertising. So I know what it means to put one thing on your flyer and to say a different thing. You feel me? I know what it means to put Tom of Finland on the poster and then say, oh, bro, you should come to my event. For what? Who gonna be there? The Tom of Finland's gonna be there. All the men who look like that gonna be there. What's there for me? Because those men don't want to play with me. They don't want to talk to me about a thing. So why am I going? So I think it's extremely important that when you desire to have more than one type of person show up at a thing, then that advertisement needs to reflect that, because there's a little black girl out there somewhere who would have gone and might have met her sir there, but didn't feel comfortable going there because your advertising was wrong. That's very important to me that if it's supposed to be an all-encompassing thing, then have very neutral advertising. Or have several people on the advertising. I like that idea. So let's all get together and be the advertisement for everything. Because if everything is open to everybody, then I can stand next to you and we can be the advertisement. See what I'm saying? Yeah. You know I'm cute.
So for me, this is kind of a complicated question and a complicated answer, because my leather upbringing was mostly in a white, cis, gay, male leather community. So for me, because I was pretty and intelligent, I had such a wonderful time. Or so I thought. Anyway, so for the most part, yeah, I had such a wonderful time. When we talk about branding, because I think that word needs to be thrown out there, because it's not just the community, it's also the individual. So when we talk about branding and marketing, we have to go to the root of the cause, which are the board members. Who are the board members who are sitting in that organization, and why are they approving all of the marketing materials as they are? So that's one question. Two is, who are the board members really wanting to come to their event? Are they wanting to come to their event to fuck them, or are they wanting the inclusivity and diversity that the community is asking for? So that's the second question. And 3 is, why has it not changed in decades? And then we have to go back to the first question again and kind of tweak it and say, how many of these board members have sat on this board and for how long? Because I feel that some change has not come because some people feel they can still shit and sit on the pot and watch and also point at the younger generations and saying that they're doing it wrong. And if you're telling the younger generations that they're doing it wrong and you're not giving them an opportunity to step up in a leadership, not in a volunteer role, in a leadership role to show what they have, then you're also doing a disservice to everyone, including yourself. So for me, the reason why this is complicated, because sitting as a media maven of International Mr. Leather, International Mr. Bootblack, which is primarily a gay male event, it does have diversity. However, it's not necessarily marketed towards other genders, not openly. So I handle most of the social media, and a lot of IML, IMDb is graphic work. So my job basically, especially at the weekend, like during the weekend, is to show the diversity of the attendees and to show the diversity of the IML and IMDb classes. So I'm doing as much as I can within my role, especially since I am the first or the second woman of color to own their own department. So even within my department, I make the opportunity to make it diverse. So over the past couple of years, there have been mainly female-identified individuals and non-gender conforming individuals sitting in my department. So again, I'm thinking from the ground up. So if my department is diverse, then the I is diverse. So therefore, what's being published in terms of social media is going to be diverse. So my question and my homework to everyone is to go back to your local, regional, and even national communities and ask them who is sitting on their board, because some of these organizations refuse to put their board members on their websites, and that tells you something there. So who is sitting on your board, how long, and what is the diversity and demographic makeup of your board? And also ask them if they even have a marketing and social media person on their board. Because a lot of these events is either the producer or someone they just like tell, hey, throw this up. And if you don't have someone specifically dedicated to showing off your event, that's also a problem. And just have conversations also, for instance, me or anyone else, even Claude, have conversations with those people that you know are the marketing and media people and say, hey, I don't see me. And it's not just you, like, hey, I don't see any Asians. Hey, I don't see any Hispanic. What's going on here? Is it an event thing? Are you not publishing the photos? Can I see the photos? Can I help with the marketing? So again, for me, it's a very good question, but it's a complicated question because I feel like one of my goals in this community is to intentionally sit in spaces that aren't marginalized enough, like that don't have that demographic, and sit there and be annoying to those who refuse to change. So I'm literally, and that's probably why I have so much Black exhaustion after 12 years, I've literally been sitting there and holding space and then ripping open more space for others to come in and join me so that then I can step out of that space and say, here you go have fun, I'm gonna go and make another space over here.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to recognize that we've had an awful lot of questions come up here, and it's... Oh, great. Thanks, Scarlett. Appreciate it. So we're going to try to get through as many of these questions as we possibly can. So as such, when these questions come up, try to answer as quickly as possible. If we aren't able to finish answering all the questions, we'll see what we can do to put together answers to the questions and put them online, make them available. Or if you have no problem coming up to us afterwards and asking us directly, then that works too. I want to ask another one of my questions, and then we'll get to some of these. Taisha, you brought up the questions of who is on these leather boards, leather club boards, organizing bodies that put on contests and such. A question that I had is, and again, not a great segue, but I apologize, Social media has made our leather community a lot smaller and a lot more accessible. So when we are able to have a little bit better visibility as to who is running these events, who is putting on these events, when we see that there's problematic behaviors or problematic individuals, what is, how should clubs, boards, what have you, go about resolving those issues and gaining the confidence in the community? And taking it a step further, if you can, when there's problematic issues that happen in one part of the country, what is the responsibility of folks in a different part of the country to address those issues? Is it something that we address individually or just systematically? That's a lot of questions. I apologize. So take whatever you want. Anyone and everyone. Yeah, I thought that's what was going on.
Well, while they think, I'm going to say the first thing that you should do is apologize. Because so many, when things fuck up and they're like, oh, oops, then they go to and then they wait 3 or 4 days before they publish anything. So that's another no-no, right out the gate. If you know that there is even a chance that this could be really not in favor and was really not a good thing, apologize. Because usually the first mistake that I see in a lot of organizations is they immediately go on a defensive mode. So that means you automatically separated yourself from the people that you're supposed to be serving. And again, these events are supposed to be serving the community. So when they're constantly having to defend themselves, then the question you need to ask them is, is the event serving themselves, or are they trying to serve the people? And again, I think this goes along with the underlying problem of how selfless is leather, how inclusive is leather, how diverse is leather, and it literally depends on who's sitting on these boards and how educated they are in terms of leadership skill sets. Because you can be famous and have 89 titles and look super pretty, but if you can't do what do you call it when people have arguments and you're mediating? If you don't know how to mediate, and if you don't know how to deal with conflict resolutions, and if you don't know how to literally problem solve, again, apologize, say what happened. I'm sorry, here's what happened, here's what should have happened, here's how we're going to address it, here's who's going to address it. If you have comments and concerns, please reach out to these people. Here are the names of these people. Here's the contact information from these people. And at this date, we're going to circle back and check in and see how it went. That would probably be the fastest way of helping.
I do always find it very problematic when leadership has egos. And unfortunately, again, when you're in a position of power or a position of leadership, there is this level of pride, right? But ultimately is to understand that, you can't always be right. There has to be a level of humility when it comes to how am I dealing with other people, a lot of minds, a lot of ideas. You're not going to make it perfect, but ultimately you're going to, as long as you're making strides to make it as inclusive as possible. You're not going to be able to please everybody, but you're making attempts. And I think it goes to the concept of just apologizing. You're not going to be able to please everybody, but at the same time, be humble enough to say, I'm sorry. And I think that's a very valid point. I think a lot of people forget that, regardless of your position or your sense of leadership, that being humble enough to say, you know what, we didn't do it right. And it's okay as long as you're making the steps towards it. And I think organizations get, there's a lot of times that organizations do this and they have no remorse for the community that they're supposed to be serving. And like you said, they're very selfish now.
Mike?
I think it needs to start even earlier, that there needs to be, before an event even happens, there needs to be a certain amount of review and reflection of the content before it even happens. And what comes to mind, and I guess I can call out certain contests by name because I was so infuriated, but I walked out of the Palm Springs Leather Contest this year after the second really awful racial joke that happened in the first 15 minutes. I walked out. And not only did I walk out, I found a bunch of my other friends who were in the parking lot, one after another, because they were also distressed and disturbed by what went down. And it's like it was done under the guise of being comic. Like we're going to say these little comic quips about people's racial identities, and it's not funny. There's a point where it draws attention to things, and I felt really uncomfortable and I couldn't take it, so I walked out. So, and I think that a little bit of review before that ever happened, it's like it was unbelievable that they could have ever got that far. So, and I see that happen in a lot of local contests too. That there are certain MCs that say things that really bother me. There's a lot of racial humor that really doesn't have a place in the decorum of a leather contest.
So ideally, the review would be from white cis male individuals who would be able to catch that behavior, but
I don't think they're going to catch it.
Right. So that's what I mean. What I was about to say. There needs to be people of color, women, femme folk, trans folk, any other marginalized community in the room to be able to pick up on those kinds of issues. Getting into some of the questions that we have here, we have 3 that are very similar, so I'm going to condense them to the panel. What can people with privilege do to support those who are marginalized in our community?
Open your mouth. It isn't enough to post a post on Facebook or to reshare a tweet or to reshare something on Tumblr. Because if you stand in a grocery store and you see a black woman being treated unfairly and you have privilege to stop it and you say nothing, then what good is your privilege? What good is your privilege if you see a little boy being hounded by the police and you know he didn't do anything? Do you just keep walking past him because he's brown? What do you care? So if you have privilege, use it. Use it to ensure that the people who you say you care about and you say you want to be an ally for feel like you care. Because I can tell you the number of times I've felt like people who say they are an ally, I don't feel like they care. For instance, I had a panel this weekend, and some people were just busy. You know, they have shit to do. But at this panel, people poured open their hearts. They ripped open the scabs of their traumas due to prejudice and discrimination, whether it was for their gender or for their skin tone. And the room was not nearly as full as this. All the people who clicked like on Facebook and all the people who said, oh girl, don't worry, I'll be there. The people who didn't have other shit to do or didn't, say, I have something else to do, I wish I could be there for you. 65 people said they were going to be there. 20 people showed. All the people who said they were going to be there are people who said they're an ally. They said, I'm going to hit the reshare button on your event. But they didn't get in their car and drive to Sanctuary Studios on Saturday. Those are the same people who, when something bad happens in our community, they were silent. I can tell you from experience about silence. Let's talk about silence real quick. So my sir is Sir Valentino Harrison. Who knows this? Okay, if you don't, you know now. He's Sir Valentino Harrison. Real cute. He wears glasses. He was SoCal Leather Master 2013. Yes. Southwest Leather Master 2015. But let me tell you, 14. But let me tell you what happened in 2014. 2014 went by, it was cool, everything was great. In 2015, one of his slaves left his household and wrote a letter to the massive leather community and said, this man is an alcoholic and beats me and choked me out and this thing happened. And we said, bitch, that didn't happen. You're just mad because you left. Like, that's not really real. This leather community that was supposed to be his friends and his family, they were silent when he could not run for international leather master and slave. They were silent when Southwest said, we're not going to support you. So what good is that privilege then for all those people who said they were our allies? What does that matter if you didn't get on the phone with Southwest and said, what the fuck is your problem? Because a year later she came out and said, I made it up, my bad. And those same allies said, ain't that bitch crazy? And he had to tell them, she has courage. What do you have? I told you the story, just want to share it with you, my experience, but also for you to know that it is not enough for you to press like on Facebook. It is not enough for you to call your friend and talk about, girl, yes, and did you see? Because if you weren't at the thing, then it doesn't matter. If you didn't make the phone call, then it doesn't matter. All these words that are on social media do not matter if you do not do the thing. If you don't use your feet and open your mouth.
Kind of want to expound on that, and I guess trying to see how short of a phrase I can make it. So I think people need to be more okay with being uncomfortable when a reality is presented to them that isn't their reality. So if a marginalized population or person or individual or experience comes on your lap and it's for whatever reason, and it wasn't a reality, and it makes you uncomfortable, the first thing you shouldn't do is defend your own reality. And I think that's kind of been one of the biggest problems in this community, is the whole not all hashtag, well, it wasn't me. And when you do that, you actually dismiss the experiences and the realities of others who have taken the time and the vulnerability to come to you in the first place and to reveal it to you, right? So when you're sitting in a seat of privilege, you're really, really comfortable with the reality that you're sitting in, right? For me right now, I happen to be more privileged financially, so now I have to be very careful and more vigilant and more aware of those who are not as economically privileged as me. And when I see opportunities of people who are struggling in their economic privilege, then I know that I need to step out if able to help assist them, because if I keep walking forward and everyone's falling behind, I really don't want to be walking forward by myself. And I shouldn't be walking forward by myself, especially if we keep saying that we're a community. So if you feel yourself becoming or feeling uncomfortable with a situation that you've either read or someone's spoken to you, take a breath, pause, and see and try and realize and hear what the reality is of that other person. Because it doesn't necessarily make your reality wrong. You just don't realize that there are other facets in the diamond that is the whole.
The concept of privilege is something that's kind of relatively new to me. I didn't understand it very much for a very long time. Until I started realizing that, being a 6 foot tall, light-skinned Mexican was definitely a privilege amongst my other Mexican siblings, my friends, anybody who was darker than I was. And I started realizing that there was definitely a level of privilege that I had. And it was very uncomfortable. And it was very uncomfortable because I started realizing that I was in this position of but I'm still Latino. So I don't have the full privilege, but I do have privileges in certain areas. Being in an interracial relationship and him being a black man, I do realize that in certain scenarios, even my best friend, who's also a black man, we go to stores and stuff like that, I do notice my privilege. I notice them being looked at versus me being looked at. And I'm still a person of color, but I'm not dark. I'm not black. And I think it's one of those things where you just don't, what are you looking at? What's going on? Address it, confront it. It's very uncomfortable. I am by far the least confrontational person in this room, ultimately. But the reality is you have to stand up for it. And granted, you're not going to do it always. Again, you're not going to always do it right. You're going to probably stumble around your words. And when I get uncomfortable, I get really antsy, more than I really am. But I think it's one of those things where I acknowledge your privilege. I apologize for people's behaviors a lot, but it's not because I'm trying to make up for their mistakes, but because I didn't have to go through that. I didn't have to go through what that person went through. And more importantly, I want to know what I can do. sometimes by asking the people that you, like, again, that may not be as privileged as you are, like, what can I do for the community? What can I do for you? Is a good way to start. However, just don't take it upon yourself to go like, well, I'm going to do this for the community. Ask. Find out what it is. Because ultimately, it's also privileged to say, like, well, you think you can just fix everything. That's not the case. We can't. But if we ask people that it's affecting, it's bothering, I think we can do little steps. But the reality is, if you do have privilege, use it. And you may not use it correctly the first time, but give it a couple shots. It's kind of fun sometimes.
So I want to ask a couple questions about the term ally and the concept of allyship. A lot of folks use the term ally. Cupcake, you were talking about the allies that said, hey, I'm going to show up to your event, and they didn't. There are a lot of folks that will use the term as loosely as I use the term that I'm a soccer player because I played adult soccer 1 year. That's not, if I'm not actively doing it, then it's, I don't know how well I can actually use that term. So regarding the term ally, let's just start there. How do you feel about the term ally? And yes, that's a softball question. So
honestly, I actually feel like the term ally is weird because it makes it sound like we're in a fucking war, and we not. We not. I mean, okay, look. Sometimes it feels like a war when you look at what's happening in the world and all these divides between genders and identities and race and all this stuff, and your brain wants to fall out. But are we allies or are we family? Because if you are an ally, you get to be like,
Potato salad, because we got our own potato salad.
I don't even want your potato salad. I mean, I do, but I really want macaroni and cheese, and I'm making myself, and I don't trust y'all. What I'm trying to say is, when you talk about an ally is a distant thing. An ally is somewhere over there. When we went to World War, the allies were allies because they were in different parts of the globe. But Texas wasn't an ally to California. We were in the war together, right? So if we're in this, whatever this is, let's say it's a war. It's not really a war, but let's say it is. If we're in this war together, then why shouldn't we just say, this is my family, this is my brother, I forgot his name, this is my brother whose name I forgot too, and y'all are all my family. So when something happens to your family, it makes it easier for you to jump off. Because if your actual little brother was in a fight, what would you do? If I was actually a little sister and someone assaulted me, what would you do? Would you post on Facebook? Or would you get in your car, girl, where is he? I have my gun and my knife and I'm ready. Well, let's go. See, he ready. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to be my family? Oh, yeah, not okay. Fine. I love you anyway.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So that would be the best case scenario of an quote-unquote ally is someone who is family and who shows up with you, when something like that happens. I want to discuss a couple problematic types of quote-unquote ally, such as, there's, the type of ally that wants to score points by posting Martin Luther King quotes on Facebook and saying, hey, look, I talk about black people. Or they raise money. Or they raise money for certain charities, foundations, what have you. And then it's like, see, I raised money. I threw money at the problem, what have you. Those types of quote-unquote allies are out there to collect ally trophies, right?
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I was going to say that.
I saw that from Girl Complex, not gonna lie. What's the best way to handle or address those types of allies? And I'll be very specific and say, what happens when, we all exist in social media, what happens when those type of quote-unquote allies have a large vocal following on Facebook, and if you try to call them out, you all of a sudden get attacked and steamrolled, right? So then it kind of does feel more like a war at that point, right? So how do we actually address those situations when they come up and try to get the truth out there about a particular situation?
It's simple. For me, you just take them off your ally list. Like they're no longer.
You're not part of this guild.
How about just because again I'm trying to utilize. What are we giving opportunities to do something about it? I think addressing them to different things, educating them, providing them more information to utilize what they consider their progress or their strides toward being an ally, and saying, well, that's great, and we thank you for that, but maybe you want to try doing this, A, B, and C. One of the things I do realize that a lot of people, they think they know what's going on, but they haven't asked, or they weren't exposed to other things that they can do. Maybe we can give them the opportunity to actually know other platforms, other things that they can do to utilize their influences. Celebrities think they can solve the problems with their money or stuff like that, but sometimes you're like, well, thank you, but we need this. And maybe we could give them the opportunity to let them know what our needs are. Then they could utilize, oh, I didn't realize that. Because a lot of people like to throw money at problems. It's true. I mean, I work, I'm the ED for a nonprofit organization. Throw money at me, that's cool. But the thing is, right now, I need to make sure that you have an opportunity how you can help me. And maybe the intention's good. Maybe you realize what their intentions are. If their intentions are really to help, then great. Give them an opportunity to help. Don't necessarily put to the scaffold.
So this is going to address exactly what you just said, so feel free to respond with C, previous answer. How do we address the again, quote-unquote allies who will speak out about a particular issue and see that they see both sides of an issue, or try to wait and see how things play out? Or if you do speak out on it and they say, you know what, I feel like you're being a little bit too sensitive and maybe we should dial it down. Again, going back to what your answer was, is it just the previous answer, or do you have anyone else wants to add to that?
I think it depends on the issue. So let's talk about black people, because I'm black. If you talk to me about black people and you're not black, I immediately can respond, and unfortunately, you're not allowed to tell me my answer's wrong. That's period. And that happens to me all the time because I'm a woman, so men feel like they can just say whatever they want to me. And I'm black, so men feel like they can just say whatever they want to me. And I go, excuse me, I'm looking at my skin and I'm looking at your skin. Your skin doesn't say that you know this thing. And that's hard because some of those men are my friends. My godfather is a white man. He is a tall, 6'2", thin, white man with white hair. And he's fantastic and I love him. But there are certain conversations that man will never have with me. One, because he loves me, and two, because he can't honestly tell me what it's like to be a black woman. He just can't. So when you talk about a thing, specifically, I'm looking at the things happening on social media. I can't speak to really, in a generic sense, I can't speak to really personal things because those are personal. But generically, on, let's say, Facebook, because most people don't use Twitter anymore, you post a thing about a black thing on Facebook, and black people start responding, and then you say something like, I think you guys are being too sensitive. Girl, bye. I'm black. I'm allowed to comment on everything black. Anything that says Wakanda forever, I'm allowed to comment on. If you are trans, you are allowed to comment on anything that says trans, whatever. That doesn't matter. Somebody's talking about activism, somebody's talking about a person, somebody's talking about this person's fucking up and they're trans. You're allowed to be like, well, let me tell you a thing. Because the person posting it may not know that thing because they are not that. And if you are the person who posted it, I invite you to be humble and listen to the words of the person who's trying to help you. I also don't believe you should respond in anger. I don't believe you should come out the gate with, bitch, you're wrong and here's why. Because that's not love. That's not what we are about. Okay, that's not what I'm about. I believe that you say, hey, did you know X, Y, and Z? And so here's why this is not a good idea. Do you want to amend this statement? Well, maybe you're being too sensitive. Okay, now I'm mad. That's why I do that. That's why I say, look, I don't think you should do that. I don't think this is a good idea. I also don't believe that if you are a quote ally, it doesn't matter your race or gender, I don't believe that you should, what is the word I'm looking for? Because I don't want to say this wrong. I think that when you are active in your support of a person, yes, I did just read that right there. When you're active in your support of a person or a cause, I invite you to ask the people who that relates to if your ideas sound weird. My sister is a slave. She's white. She asks me every day, Cupcake, is this weird? And I go, no, you can post that. It's cool. Also, just a side note, don't ever post anything horrible on Facebook because my sister will come out of the gate lying. She uses her white privilege really, really well. These are her words, not mine. I intend to use my white privilege to make people feel bad about doing horrible things. I love her so much. I love her so much. She's so great. So great. Sorry. My point was to open your mouth and to talk about the thing and to communicate and to not feel badly when someone comments and says, hey, I don't think that you personally understand the struggle of this type of person. I think that you should listen to that person when they say, hey, I'm black and here's my problem. I'm a woman, here's my problem. I'm trans, here's my problem. So do you understand why this post was problematic, or do you understand the thing? Looping back around to your first question though, I don't think that you should respond in anger to the things you see. Because when you respond in anger, there are firefights on Facebook and that gets weird. I think that you should respond in kindness and love and understanding. Understand the person who posted the thing has no clue what the fuck you're talking about. They just reshare the thing. They agree with that one statement. And maybe by you sharing your story with them, they'll understand it better. So when this time when they share it, they can amend it with, as such and such a story is. And so that's why I feel this way. As opposed to just, well, my moral compass says it should go this way. Ah, shit, I don't know how it goes the way that I think it's supposed to go.
So I'm really bad with poker face, and the word allies, just like anytime it's brought up now, I just have to like sit on my feelings for a little bit before I say anything. So I guess for this particular discussion, we're going to be talking about policing. So policing of emotions. So the first thing you do when you see a marginalized population react or experience something and their reaction or experience is extremely emotional, sit and be quiet. Because for most of us, when anyone experiences pain or trauma, the emotion comes first, the words come second. And depending on the person will depend on the priority of which one they wanted you to see in the first place. So you have to allow us the time to experience our trauma and hurt. And then you have to realize that it is a privilege for you to experience that trauma and hurt. And then it's going to be a privilege for us to explain to you our trauma and our hurt. Because sometimes we don't have time to explain our trauma and hurt because something else is giving us trauma and hurt. So like, I've been reading more about, Black exhaustion and stuff, but like, for some of us, we're in this cycle of grieving, especially during the Ferguson riots when it was boy after girl, after trans person, after boy, after man, after woman being shot. You never really had time to grieve, breathe, and then move on and find something happy. So basically, we were in this perpetual state of sadness. And when you're sad for so long, you go through these 5 stages of grief. So a lot of Black women, especially Black mothers, are in the stage of anger some of us can be in this stage of anger for many years because we're just tired of seeing our children die, right? And if you have the privilege of not being that statistic to where your children is a high statistic of death by police, then you should police your words and your emotions and your actions towards that demographic. And, you know, as I've gotten older, I've learned that it's okay for me to be angry at things. Because I realized that growing up, a lot of white people took away my ability to have any other emotion than grateful and happiness. So for me, being the age of 33, yes, I'm gonna be angry at things in the US. I'm angry that Trump is still president. It should be okay. Like, anger should be an okay emotion. For me, though, you also have to realize that you can't take it personally, and if you have the ability to move away from the shrapnel that comes out of this trauma and anger, you can't take it personally if you get hit and hurt, especially if you intentionally put yourself in the way of that shrapnel. So if you know that you don't have the education, the verbiage to sit there in that space and be silent while people are trying to convey their thoughts and feelings, then move out of the way. Because if you start defending yourself and then policing their emotions and all that, you're setting yourself up to be part of that trauma and hurt. So then you're actually derailing their experiences and their trauma and hurt, and that means you're preventing them from being able to move on and heal. And I know this is like super heavy and complicated when I'm explaining, but basically, like, some of the best allies that I've seen are the ones that tell other people to sit down and be quiet. Because a lot of people just don't know how to sit down and be quiet. Like, we know how to fuck, we know how to fuck, you know, well, blogger, you can do a single toe. I know how to fist, I'm black and red, yeah. And I do talk a lot, but what a lot of people don't realize is that on most of these flights I'm working, or when I'm home being introverted, I'm sitting and I'm being silent and I'm reading all of these posts on Facebook. And I'm witnessing all of these emotions, and I'm witnessing all of these experiences, so that if I have the opportunity for that person to, out of nowhere, come to me in a private chat and reach out to me, I can say, I saw you, and I see you, and I'm here for you. What can I do? Because I saw you, I see you, and I hear you. I may not have responded to you on your thread because I was just witnessing you, like how it is on that one movie, witnessing a person. But that's one of the best things you can do as an ally, is just be a witness. And then, if possible, exercise your privilege to go from a witness to an active person, especially if that person's mental, emotional, or physical health is in danger. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, even on airlines, domestic violence, domestic abuse, emotional abuse. There have been times that even when I'm not in my uniform, I'll be in like a store and I'm witnessing emotional abuse, and I'll just go up to the guy. That was completely unacceptable. She did not deserve that. I hope she can find something better. And you should do better. Because that's what it is to be an ally. It's just not like black. So I am not always the person that's in trouble, and I'm not always the one that's in the trauma or in the pain. However, when I have the spoons, and the fucks to give, and the fucks to give, because most of the time we don't have the spoon. But when I have the spoon, I absolutely try and make sure that there aren't more of me that need the same healing that I do. So any way that I can prevent or create space to where it never occurs, that's just what I'm gonna do. And so that, that's kind of the reason why I think I don't like the word ally anymore, because they think it's a one and done kind of deal. Like, they go through the drive-through, hey, can I have one order of transgender advocacy and, a small of this Black Lives Matter thing? Oh, actually, can I change that to an All Lives Matter with a Coke? And I'm like, are you serious? Because you didn't sit there and listen, and your immediate response is now All Lives Matter. Okay, think you're being an ally. I'm just going to delete you from my page. Because sometimes we don't